So, with all the confusion surrounding the foreclosure process, is the hype worse than the actual bite? Peter Murphy is a real estate consultant and CEO of HomeEncounter.com in Tampa, and Steve Bartlett is CEO of the Financial Services Roundtable in Washington, D.C. Welcome to you both. Steve, I want to start with you.
Thank you.
We've been following this situation for, I believe, 3 weeks now as this story has unfolded. And one of the questions I've been wanting to ask somebody out there, you represent the banks, so I want to give it to you. Why should the banks be given a moratorium that will actually just give them time to get their cases together? If you can't prove your foreclosure case in a court of law, why shouldn't you be thrown out?
If you can't pay your mortgage, you shouldn't be allowed to keep your house. Your mortgage shouldn't be forgiven. And this whole nonsense about moratoriums putting hundreds of thousands of houses vacant and back into the market that can't be sold and can't be done anything with is nonsense, and it's really absurd.
But Steve, to my
moratorium would be
question,
an unmitigated disaster.
To my question,
Sure.
if banks don't have the documents to show that they actually own the mortgage, why should they be allowed to proceed with a foreclosure? Whether or not the person is paying on that mortgage, if they don't have the correct documentation, if they don't have people signing the documents in the way they're supposed to, and keep in mind some folks are being accused of lying in these proceedings, why should we give the banks more time to prove their case?
Actually, it's a case of form over substance or process over substance. We do have the documents. We have the evidence. In some cases, a handful of state judges have said that the affidavit wasn't filled out properly, so go back and fill it out in a different way. But in all of these cases, the people involved can't pay their mortgages or don't pay their mortgages and don't even qualify for a modification of a mortgage that would based on a reasonable ability to repay. So what should happen here is that we should modify the mortgages that the borrowers can, and if not, if someone can't pay their mortgage, then they have to give up the house. There shouldn't be this sort of overhang of saying, well, somehow it can be the lottery that maybe you can keep your house and have the mortgage simply forgiven. That's not going to happen, shouldn't happen, but as long as it is the overhang, it will
Peter,
lead to really worse circumstances.
Yeah, I think any way this gets solved, I think it's a real hangover for the real estate market, which is where I wanted to go with you, Peter. What is the outlook for real estate? You're in Florida. You're an expert on real estate. What does this mean for the local markets when you dig down and you get right into the court system down there? Does this just stop everything cold?
It does, and it already has. Since the first of the month, we've seen here locally, we've seen 15% of all foreclosure listings pulled from the market. Down in Miami, we've seen as many as 30% of listings pulled. So whether or not anyone's talking moratorium, we're already seeing the effects of it by a huge drop in the total volume of available foreclosure listings, and it's taking a huge toll on the local market.
Right. And Steve, to you, you look at the real estate industry and its importance that is to banking. What is, let's say, a delay of 6 months to 12 months going to mean for the finances of the banking industry?
Well, it's not so much the finance of the banking industry as it is to the economy and the community.
No, sir, you're from the banking industry.
Yeah.
What kind of impact is this going to have on your industry?
It would have a negative impact on the industry, but more importantly, it's a negative impact on the whole economy. So it would freeze the housing market even further, and that's a disaster for everyone.
Have you seen any kind of analysis of the actual impact that is on banking revenues, bottom lines? What's the real cost of this? Because, look, we're looking at a banking sector that is rebuilding, trying to come back from one of the worst financial crises in our lifetime.
Gerri, I do understand your question. The banks in this case are handling the situation from their end pretty well. They're going back through the files and reviewing the files and getting the paperwork in order. This situation is far more important to the communities involved and to the housing market than it is to the banks. The banks will take a hit, no doubt, but the real impact is on the economy.
All right, Peter, looking locally again, you were saying that so many of these foreclosures are being pulled. What do you see as the real-world impact in those communities? Do you see it creating more foreclosures? Do you think that more homes will be lost simply because of that kind of domino effect you see with foreclosures?
Yeah, it will. You know, the market's so interrelated right now. I mean, right off the bat, what we've seen is that people who had contracts to buy these foreclosed homes have their contracts pulled from them the day before closing. At the closing table, they're not able to buy their dream foreclosure homes. And that has a huge psychological impact, obviously, on people. But in addition to that, you've got whole firms that have been set up to sell these homes and service these homes. They're going to go out of business when they can't do that. You've got municipalities and homeowners associations who are hoping to sell these homes so they could clean up their acts, and they're not going to be able to get those things sold and closed and cleaned out. You're going to have a slew of lawsuits that are going to come up against homeowners and title insurance and former homeowners, and as well as current people who have bought these homes thinking they had clear title. And there's going to be a slew of lawsuits stack up against those people. So one thing after another, it's going to be a huge domino effect here locally, and it's going to really hurt our recovery on a local level, and like you said, extend it back for a year or more, just while we're dealing with this moratorium mess.
All right. Well, Peter and Steve, thanks so much for coming in tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gerri.
Thank you.